Welcome back to GTD. We've got football and F1 this week. No NASCAR season's over. MLB awards did come out, but there's a lot to talk about with football and F1 this week, so we're going to put that on the back burner for now. But it was a rivalry week in college football. The playoffs are almost here.
It was fight week. Fight week in America.
It was SmackDown week.
Teams are brawling and get pepper sprayed all over the place.
Listen,
quite entertaining.
All I can tell you is you better not carry a flag toward the center of a field because you're going to get beat up.
Sprayed. Especially in that windy environment. Pepper spray probably not the move. Cops could have ran that play a little better.
Random.
They'll get back to the team meeting this week and they'll talk about it and they'll have a better game plan going into next weekend. But yes, let's talk about all the craziness that happened in college football starting Friday night.
Yeah.
What we anticipated was just going to be another. Georgia Tech's decent, but we didn't think it was going to be this kind of a good game. Georgia Tech in 8 overtimes.
Yeah.
What a game! All of America's eyes were on it. Maybe not in the first 3 quarters, but in that fourth quarter, everybody was watching that, seeing if Georgia Tech can pull it off. They did not. They lost in 8 overtimes. We'll talk about why they lost in a second. But yeah, I mean that's brutal.
Yeah, I watched this entire game, and the first thing that stands out is you a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks back now, when we didn't have a bat flip of the week, you gave your dog of the week. And I think it's time to bring that back because Haynes King deserves dog of the week from this performance.
He would for sure be dog of the week if his coach didn't forget how to use him in overtime.
Oh my gosh, why did they quit running the ball?
Especially, I think it was overtime 3 or 4 when they were the second team to go for a 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
Georgia had already missed it, so technically you're playing on a free down.
Yeah.
Like if you don't get this, nothing matters. You run the football there with your guy. 9 times out of 10.
And they had the play that worked. It felt like on every 4th and 1 they had the entire game where they run that triple option. King runs up the middle.
Yep.
Granted, they did try in 1 overtime and it got stopped. But also, I think if King would have handed that off, there was space to the outside. So I don't get why you abandoned the run. They almost exclusively threw the ball, and they had 8 chances or 6 of the 2-point conversions.
Well, sir, that is just the technical coaching that Kirby Smart does. You know, they lined up. They're probably about to run the ball. But what did Kirby Smart do as the coach he is? Gets a sideline warning to throw off the momentum. Gets the momentum to himself.
Called a bunch of timeouts.
And then what he does every single time after that, just because he can, call a timeout.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Did you know that the Georgia seniors have never lost at home? Oh my gosh.
They are now they're now Alabama still has a 1-game advantage because I kept showing this graphic over consecutive home wins.
Yeah.
Maybe in the SEC, I think.
It's SEC.
Alabama's 32.
Clemson had the most.
Alabama's 32 now with the Iron Bowl, and Georgia is 31 now, just escaping Georgia Tech. But yeah, that just starts rivalry week. I mean, it was crazy. There was no fight in this game. The coach actually hugged after the game, so there was good blood here. But then you go to the next morning, Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan takes down number 5 Ohio State in a shock to most everybody. 19.5-point underdog, biggest upset since 1969 in this game, in the game. So that is an incredible feat for Michigan. And wow, Ryan Day.
Yeah, the seat is on fire at this point. The seat is on fire. And I think it's now 18 years in a row, maybe 17, that the team that has had more rushing yards has won this game. And Michigan had more rush yards in this one. But still, the pick that Will Howard threw to set Michigan up for their only touchdown, he looked like he was playing concussed. I'm not going to lie.
He was sluggish the whole game. I mean, they only put, 13 points on the board? Or 10?
10,
yeah. 10. They only put 10 points on the board. I mean, both of these teams were trying to lose. Believe you me.
The Ohio State kicker, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's having a bad week.
Someone take one of the Pat McAfee contestants, Tyler Toney from Dude Perfect, stick him on the field. Oh my goodness, that poor kicker.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I could kick because I don't think I would be able to make a pressure kick in that environment. But still, if you're a college scholarship kicker, you got to hit those.
Yeah, especially that second one. What was that like? Maybe a 30. It was maybe just over 30.
It was rough.
Around 30.
It was rough.
It was almost an NFL PAT at that point. I mean. That one's rough, but I hope he's doing better.
Yeah,
Hope he's still on the team.
What did you think about the quote after from Khalil Mullins that they got to learn how to lose?
I think he's right. I think they do need to learn how to lose. But I think they were anticipating. It's just, you see this all the time. I know this is a rivalry game, so maybe not. I could be wrong, but you see this all the time where coaches talk about you can't overlook an opponent no matter who it is. And I feel like they just overlooked Michigan, saying, "Oh, we don't have to worry about them this year. We're looking for the playoffs." And they're still going to make the playoffs. I'm not discrediting that. But you can't overlook any opponent, especially the end of the year rival.
Yeah, this is, in my opinion, I think the Iron Bowl is the biggest. I think the game is the second. I think it's the second biggest college football rivalry in America. And Ryan Day, the fact that he cannot seem to beat Michigan, he's 1-4 now. And after the first game where he beat Michigan, he's like, we're going to hang 100 on him. And since then, over the next 4 games, he has not put up 100
There's
cumulative
a whole
points.
senior class there that has not beat Michigan.
That's outrageous. You think about 6 years ago, Ohio State was on that massive streak versus Michigan. And if you would have told me that turned around that quickly, especially this year, after everything that Michigan lost, all the talent they lost, they lose Jim Harbaugh, there's all the outside noise of the sanctions
and all the noise
stuff.
around Ohio State this season, saying they had all the NIL, best NIL class, best recruiting class, best class this, best class that, best quarterback, best this, and
it's just, it feels like if Ryan Day can't beat Michigan at home this year, when is he ever going to again? If he even gets the chance.
Yeah, that's a huge recruiting thing for Michigan. Just those kids saying that can happen even after a down year.
And you got to think their quarterback problem is going to be solved in the near future with Bryce Underwood coming in. You got to think you're not going to have Davis Warren out there from now on, even though great story Davis Warren.
A bigger story than the game, in fact, is the fight after the game. And what are your thoughts on players at their opponents? They're in Ohio State. So the Michigan players in Ohio State planted the flag. What are your thoughts on teams planting the flag?
Okay, so I get it in certain games. I don't get it in others. I think this one is fine because everyone had marked it down as it's a guaranteed Michigan loss. Michigan has no chance. So I think for them to pull that off, you've won planting the flag. I think you deserve to be able to do that. There's some that I don't necessarily get. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's not always warranted.
There's 12 of them over the weekend.
The North Carolina NC State one for me was like, why?
Yeah, no one even watched that game.
That one felt a bit weird, especially those are two not very good teams. I feel like you kind of have to earn it, but I like the Michigan flag plant. Obviously, the fight I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, well, here's where I'm at. Baker Mayfield did it. Okay. I don't think he was the first person to do it, but he was the first guy to do it mainstream in the days of social media where it went super viral.
Yeah.
Now everybody just copies everybody, and especially I felt like after the Michigan game, every team was like, "Oh, we got to find a flag and bring a flag now. Someone's got to deliver a flag." Like it's what's happening. It's a trend. It's not a trend just because one team does it. All right, let that team have that thing. You don't need to copy someone else because they went viral for doing it. However, if I'm Ohio State or any of the teams that are playing home and lost and had a flag planted, I'm going to jail. Like I'm not letting that flag be planted on my thing.
Have you considered not losing at home to a team that's worse than you?
I get it. However, as a former athlete and as a guy who just is wired that way, like most of these athletes are, their mindset is that flag's not hitting my turf.
I get why that's the mindset, but also I think if you lose in that situation, deal with it.
Look, it'll never happen again because the NCAA is about to come down on people.
Yeah.
I say that. They only got a $100,000 fine each team and no players suspended.
Yeah.
But I think in the offseason, that'll be a new rule, and the NCAA will make sure that doesn't happen again, which we can get into the argument when it happens. But on to more football games. Let's do South Carolina Clemson.
All right.
That one, no one knew this game was going to be one-sided. Everyone knew this was going to be a tight battle, especially with the way South Carolina has been playing it recently. And it was a good game. I mean, this game could have been won by any team. It wasn't. South Carolina beat Clemson.
Lenore Sellers called game. Let's talk about Lenore Sellers. I think Clemson is the better team. Lenore Sellers was the best player on the field.
Right. And I think we've said time and time again, the best quarterback is going to win in college football most of the time, and this is a great example of that.
Yeah, these were two defenses that played well in this game. The offenses both struggled for good portions of this game as well. I think the interception from Cade Klubnik at the end there is a very unlucky pick to bounce off of Phil Maffa like that right into the South Carolina defender's arms. You don't know what happens if that's not picked. Maybe Clemson gets a field goal up. Maybe it's into overtime, but that's not the point. They lost. It got picked. But right. Lenore Sellers in this game, I think to go into an environment like Clemson as a redshirt freshman quarterback in a rivalry game and basically take over the game is an extremely impressive performance.
Yeah, no, it's fun to watch him play. It's been fun to watch him play all year when he's been healthy. Because there were some games where he played, but he was still nursing injuries, coming back from injury. So it's great to see him when he's healthy. And I mean, Clemson just didn't capitalize on the opportunities they had. Before the drive before the interception, they had to punt. Whereas the drive before the interception for South Carolina, they scored a touchdown.
I will say
they just didn't respond very well.
There were also a couple calls in this game I didn't necessarily agree with. I think the worst one, I don't know if you saw the catch on the sideline by Bryant Wesco Jr., where he had both feet in, and then they reviewed it, and they decided he was out of bounds, even though both of his feet were in.
I get it, but in a tight game like this, you can point to the refs for both teams.
Oh, you can.
In any game, you can point to the refs. So I don't like ever going to the refs for things like this. That's just a thing.
Yeah, I don't think the refs made this game either way. I don't think the refs decided it. I just wanted to cover that off before we get people going, oh, well, the refs.
Right. You have the refs, but you also have this. Here is every drive Clemson had in the second half.
It was not good.
Touchdown. Great. Fumble, punt, interception.
Yeah, you cannot win a game doing that, especially a rivalry game. And, again, just there were so many plays in this game where it felt like, oh, Clemson needs a sack. Clemson needs a big defensive play. And they get to Lenore Sellers, then Lenore Sellers goes, no, and just runs away, gets like 16 yards down the field. And you're like, how is he doing this?
Yeah.
In college, for a quarterback in college to average 10.4 yards per carry when sack yardage is counted for rushing yards is just absurd.
Yeah. And lucky for Clemson, this game didn't matter for them. They're in the ACC championship because another team lost.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that now. Miami gets upset by Syracuse in the Dome. Wow.
Is this not the most Miami thing to happen ever?
I think it is. Syracuse got hit in the mouth, down 21-0. Still crawled back, came back, scored their own 21 unanswered points to tie the game, and then it was kind of back and forth from there, and Syracuse happened to have the lead. This is one of those games where the time just ran out, and whoever had the lead won the game.
Yeah, with how Will Howard struggled versus Michigan, you wonder if there are any Ohio State fans watching Kyle McCord with rose-tinted glasses in this game, like, come back after the... Because he was on it for Syracuse in this game. 380, 3 touchdowns, and the Syracuse receiving core, I feel like, has been a little underrated a lot of this year. Trevor Pena is a very good player. Aronde Gadsden didn't play a huge role in this game, but he's kind of like a hybrid receiver, tight end, big slot guy. I think he's going to be a great player as well. Only had 50 yards, but still, a lot of the Syracuse receiving core has gone underrated through the year, and I think they're finally getting some of the respect they deserve after this game. They got open. This Miami defense, we've talked about it a lot this year. If the Miami offense ever has a slightly off game, the defense might lose them the game because of it. And when you're allowing 42 points, I don't care who your offense is. If you allow 42 points, you cannot reasonably expect your offense to overcome that.
Yeah, I agree 100% because this offense didn't play bad. Obviously, they scored 38 points.
Yeah.
The offense was still firing, but they weren't – and they even fired from the jump. This is a team that I said – in a play, I was talking about the playoffs if they were to get there, that if they get up to an early lead and can boat race you, they will. And this is what this game felt like.
Yeah.
And then the defense kind of, I'm not going to say stalled, but they did a little bit and allowed Syracuse to creep. And all you look at the clock and like, oh, tie game going into half, right?
Yeah.
So and then you go, all right.
Miami was up 7 at the half.
Right, but still, like you'd let them back into the game at that point. Because it's 7-point game, whatever. It's way different than a 21-point game.
Yeah.
So you let them back in, and then coming out of the second half, Syracuse does the exact same thing Miami does. They just come out the gate swinging and hit Miami in the mouth and go, whoa, hold on. And then, the rest is history, and they won.
21-point third quarter is so much momentum, especially at home. And
in the second half, too.
Once you have that going at home, it's going to be very hard, regardless of who the away team is, for them to turn it around.
Yeah, and so they did an okay job, but not enough.
Still, though, you wonder if you're the committee after this game, is Miami a playoff team in your eyes?
I think. Should we talk about the other two games first before we get into this? Because we have this topic right now.
Okay.
Because this is a very broad topic.
Okay.
Just outside Miami. Another game, Memphis knocks Tulane out of the playoff, which we say out of the playoff. Who knows if they would have been in the playoffs or not?
I think they were still hanging around. They were ranked 17th, and I think if Boise State were to lose to UNLV and Tulane wins the American, Tulane would have been in the playoff.
I agree.
I agree. That's why.
But I think if Boise wins out there, all Boise has to do is win this weekend, and they would have been in over Tulane.
But
even if Tulane won.
But now you would think the Mountain West champion, no matter who it is in after the Tulane loss.
I would agree. And then finally, Texas A&M rivalry is back. Game day was there in A&M, 12th man. All this talk, Dude Perfect was there, so. That had something. But all this talk about this rivalry being back, and A&M fell flat on their feet.
They did not score a point on offense. I think that's really all you need to say. They did not score a point on offense.
They get to the red zone, and nothing.
Got absolutely stuffed.
Turnovers, baby. Turnovers.
The Texas defense, I think, does not get enough credit. A lot of people want to talk about Quinn Ewers, and Quinn Ewers, in my opinion, has been slightly disappointing this year. This Texas defense is the heart and soul of this team. I think even in the Georgia game, the Texas offense was so bad and turned it over so many times in that game that you can't expect the defense to keep holding out versus a team that has as much talent as Georgia does. The reason that Texas has beaten a lot of these teams so convincingly, even though it's a soft schedule, is because of this defense. It is a lockdown. There are so many good players. Anthony Hill Jr. might be one of my favorite players in college football. Just a super rangy, thumping middle linebacker. That guy is incredible. Jahdae Barron on the back end is such a fun player to watch as well. And you saw it versus A&M. A&M could not move the ball on Texas.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you say that, but also, if you're a Texas fan and you think, I mean, let's say they lose to Georgia and still make the playoffs. We can get the argument a little later. But let's just say, for the sake of this argument, they're in the playoffs no matter what happens next week, which looks like it could happen. They always scored 17 points and none in the second half. They could not put A&M away.
I think like A&M's a good defense as well.
They are, but this game felt. But all you're going to play in the playoffs are good defenses, mostly, especially when you get past the first round. And this game felt way closer than it was, just because A&M or Texas couldn't just put the game away. They'd get to the same thing with A&M. They'd get to the red zone consistently.
Oh yeah, the red zone turnovers for Texas are definitely a concern.
Right.
I think it's a huge concern. But
do you think that's because of the quarterback patty cake they're playing?
I don't think it's necessarily because they're switching back and forth like that. I think it's that Quinn Ewers has regressed. Also, the Kelvin Banks injury does not help. He is an incredible player, and to lose that on the offensive line is going to really impact you. So I think adjusting to that mid-game, plus Quinn Ewers is just paranoid this year. I don't know what's changed, but compared to last year, he is not as decisive. He'll sit in the pocket longer, and it's really got him in trouble. So I still think this is a team that wins a playoff game. I do think they win a playoff game, but I'm less convinced that they're able to make a deep run.
I agree. And one more topic before we get into the hot topic, the CFP. Who's your Heisman winner right now?
Mine is Ashton Jeanty.
Ashton Jeanty. I am going Travis Hunter.
Okay, one thing I do want to say, even though we disagree here, these are both incredible players.
Yep.
I know I'm going for Ashton Jeanty, but all the people on Twitter that are saying, oh, it's Ashton Jeanty because all Travis Hunter does is play snaps. That's not true.
No.
He is an incredible corner. I know everyone's going to find the tape of, oh my gosh, Travis Hunter got beat on this play. You can find tape on every corner in the country getting beat.
Ashton Jeanty got tackled in this play.
Yeah, you can find tape of every single good corner getting beat. Even look at Sauce Gardner this year. I think the only corner that you can maybe go out and find tape on at either level that's not ever really getting beat is maybe Pat Surtain for the Broncos. Outside of that, what's a corner that's not getting beat occasionally? And Travis Hunter is so athletic. He is so valuable on the offensive end to his team. The two-way player is just incredible. To me, though, the season that Ashton Jeanty is having, to be top 5 in single-season rushing yards all time, you look at the other recent Heisman running backs like Derrick Henry, he's blown that season out of the water in the regular season. I think these are two incredible players. I think it's very unfortunate that one of them will not get a Heisman in their college career. But for me, I think Ashton Jeanty is more valuable to his team and has had a more impressive season in my eyes.
So I think if Travis Hunter is just a defensive player or just a wide receiver, Ashton Jeanty wins. I'm going to say that. However, I don't think I'm not going, oh, the snaps. It's like, no, it's the consistent basis he plays both positions at. Does he have the best wide receiving stats? No. He's top 5 in some stats, but he doesn't have the best.
That's still very good.
Right. Does he have the best stats on defense? No. But guess what? He's top 5 over there. So when you take both of those, to be able to do that at that level, I mean, that's really impressive to me. So that's just, and he's playing better talent, in my opinion, than Boise is consistently throughout the season. So
that's totally fair.
I see that as well.
Where I'm coming from is Boise State without Ashton Jeanty is nowhere near the conversation for a first-round bye in the college football playoff. I think Colorado without Travis Hunter is still a fringe top 25 team.
Yeah, I agree. I think Boise can pretty much thank everything they have this season and what happens this season, and if they make the playoffs, which it looks like they will. I think all that credit goes to Ashton Jeanty. And I don't think anybody's blind to that. I don't think there's one guy in America saying, I don't know. You put Ashton Dutty on the bench, and Boise State's got a better shot at winning the title.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. How can you not give it to the guy?
He is this team.
The guy is the team. And I think, how can you not give a Heisman to a guy who is his team when his team should not be anywhere near first-round bye conversation without him?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've covered it. Both these guys, incredible.
I just hate to see that. I know it's how social media works. I hate to see that people are trying to make their argument for either of these players by tearing down the other one because they are both incredible.
Right, yeah. And, I mean, you made your argument by saying this is what Ashton Dutty does great, and I said this is what Travis Hunter does great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it should be with most things. But now on to something we may get a little more heated about.
Yes.
12th team in. Everyone's saying there's one spot left. Who's it going to be?
Okay, so first let's go through your teams that are, in our eyes, I think guaranteed a spot.
Okay.
Oregon's in,
Yes.
regardless. Penn State's in, regardless. Ohio State, I think we'd both agree is in. Georgia, I think we both think is in either way because they've already beaten Texas. And so if they lose to Texas, I think the committee will just go whatever because they're Georgia.
I think the SEC championship is the most interesting dynamic.
Okay.
As far as who loses that game, if they're still in.
Notre Dame's in, for sure. That's 5.
Yeah.
Tennessee's in. That's 6. ACC champion is in. 7.
Yep.
Indiana's in. That's 8.
Boise.
Mountain West champion, 9. Big 12 champion, 10. So then realistically, we're kind of talking about, does the SEC championship loser get in, and then who is that last spot? So first, let's say, in your opinion, does the SEC championship loser get in? And do you think that changes based on who the loser is?
I think if Texas loses, they have a better shot to make the playoffs than if Georgia loses. With that being said, realistically, I think the loser is in probably.
Yeah, I think the loser of that game is in either way.
I think so. The only caveat is if you want to make an argument for if Miami gets in and you want to make an argument if Georgia loses, and let's just say they put Miami in to put Miami in, then you have to argue between Alabama and Georgia, which gets interesting because Georgia may have the better wins and better losses, but Alabama's beat them head to head.
Yeah. That's where I think you get into a mess with a lot of this because for the ACC, in my opinion, I think if Clemson wins the ACC, SMU should, in my opinion, still be in. I think if Clemson beats SMU close, both of those teams should be in. I think if SMU beats Clemson, Clemson's done. So
yeah. 4-loss Clemson's out.
Yeah. So then you get to the conversation of, okay, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Miami for this last couple spots. For me, even as much as I would hate to see them do it, I think it has to be Alabama. Miami has 0 ranked wins. I know they're 10-2. They have 0 ranked wins.
And 2 pretty bad losses.
Yeah. If you're asking me which is playing better football right now and who I think would do better in the playoff between Alabama and South Carolina, I'm taking South Carolina. However, Alabama beat them head-to-head, and I don't think you can ignore that.
Yeah, and I think here's what's frustrating about Alabama, and anybody who's watched them knows this. When Alabama plays a handful of the games they've played this year, they look unbeatable. Georgia, they look unbeatable.
Alabama versus Georgia and Alabama versus Oklahoma feel like 2 completely different teams.
Right. So you've seen what Alabama can do. The problem is they haven't done it consistently.
No.
And I don't think they, even if they make the playoffs, will do it consistently. But I do think they sneak in. I'm not saying they lose first round because depending on who they get, that could be whatever.
And then there's the devil's advocate for South Carolina. Oh, you're playing a banged up Lenore Sellers versus Alabama. What happens if Lenore Sellers is healthy? And
I think if you beat
game.
Team, I think it's between 2 teams and one team has beat the other team, whether it's Alabama, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, or whatever. I think the team that has beat the other team head to head gets in on principle.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
If that's the reasoning they have, obviously this year it probably would be Alabama if that's the position they're in.
Yeah.
But in the years future, let's say a team beats another team that the other team looks better. But I mean, if they set that principle, I'm very okay with it.
If you're not putting the head-to-head winner in when they're comparable teams, why even play the games? Yeah, why even play the game? So even as much as it would feel,
a NASCAR debate. Why does the regular season matter?
It would feel almost wrong after the season, in my opinion, to have Alabama sneak in like that. But the season's just fallen in the teams that they've beaten. They have the win over Georgia. They have the win over South Carolina. And when you're potentially looking at those teams head-to-head, I think it just has to fall Alabama.
And I think if Georgia wins, Alabama's beat the SEC championship. That's a big star on their record.
Yeah, that is.
That helps as well.
As much as I think that might be unpopular, people are not going to like that, I think Alabama deserves it.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll see what happens this week. Obviously, next time the rankings will be out and the bracket will be set. But we don't have. Ooh, one more question. Who are your 4 buys? What conferences get a buy?
I think that Oregon wins and gets a bye. I think that the SEC gets a bye. I think that the ACC gets a bye, and I think the Big 12 gets a bye.
You don't think Boise gets a bye?
Did I say I meant Boise State, sorry. Not the Big 12. I
Okay,
think Boise State gets the bye. I think that it is Boise, ACC, SEC, and Oregon.
At this point right now, I think there's a good shot, especially if Clemson wins. ACC doesn't get a bye.
You think
I think Big
Arizona
12
State would? Oh, because Clemson. I'm still looking at the rank. Yeah, Clemson would be down.
I think if Clemson wins, Big 12 gets a bye, Boise gets a bye, ACC, you're back with the pack.
Man, Boise State would be the 3 seed.
Yeah.
Wow. Ashton Genty for Heisman, dude. They took Boise State to a 3 seed.
I think the Big 12 gets a bye.
That's a good point. I'm still, obviously, CFP rankings for the new week aren't out yet as we record this. So I'm still looking at Clemson as number 12 on this list. But do you think they dropped them below Arizona State, though? Because
yes.
Arizona State,
yes,
they murdered Arizona. So I think that
Arizona State is above. They'll be above Iowa State, but they'll be below Arizona State.
Interesting. So I think that there's a decent chance that they flip-flop where Clemson and South Carolina are in this poll right now and just put Clemson at 15 and leave them 1 spot ahead of Arizona State. Because you look at how they've treated the Big 12 all year. They've not given the Big 12 any respect.
I think it's about time. I think it's time. But also, this ranking that comes out this week is all good. Like, it's not going to be their actual ranking. It's going to be ranked to set up next week.
That's true.
You hear me out?
Yeah.
So they're not going to be ranking it like, oh, this team's better. They're like, no. We're gonna have a lot of arguments if we do that, and then change a bunch of stuff for next week. So we're gonna change as much as possible this week because no one cares as much this week, and then next week we can go, well, look at the last week. See, we'd already had them like that.
Yeah, I still think you can never quite know what they're gonna do because sometimes they just act.
They could get in a room and put South Carolina in, put Ole Miss in, drop the loser of the SEC, drop like Miami. They can do whatever they want.
Because sometimes they just flat out don't care about the games. You look at whatever year was it that Marco Wilson threw the shoe for Florida. Florida lost to LSU and went from number 7 to number 7. They stayed at the same spot after losing to that LSU team at home. They act like that game didn't happen. So you never know what they're going to do.
But we will find out shortly.